All right, welcome everyone. My name is Ryan Smith. This is Modex Network Voices. We're pleased to join you again here in relationship to the International Mass Timber Conference, a track on offsite and housing that Modex has been programming. And this is a aside, and we're glad to be able to present some additional content on what's going on as we transition from mass timber products to mass timber systems and value add. And with that, I'm joined by partners Ivan Rupnik and Tyler Schmetterer. I'd like to say hi, guys.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here.
We have the pleasure of having Mila Duncheva, who is the business development manager for UK and Ireland for Stora Enso. She also is a volunteer on the Be Changemakers project in relationship to the built environment, the best built environment smarter transformation, new name for the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre. And Matt Stevenson is also joining us. Matt is founder of Ecosystems Technologies, has a long history as inventor and also process innovator in the mass timber space. So with that, welcome both of you. Thank you for coming and being part of this. We welcome you to present, and then we'll have some Q&A.
Thank you. So, I'll start with presenting the relationship that we have that allows us to really deliver transformative impact in homegrown mass timber. We've in the last 12, 18 months, we've really transformed the viability of homegrown Scottish mass timber products. And that's really been the result of a really valuable relationship between Edinburgh Napier University, who really lead on and have done years of work on the research side of things. Mila's alumni of Edinburgh Napier, and so knows that very well. It also leverages the innovation setup that is at what was formerly CSIC, the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, is now BEST, and more recently sort of brings into the mix the education angle that comes from NMITE, the New Model Institute of Technology and Engineering. Now bring those three key sort of capabilities together, and ecosystem sits very comfortably within that as what we would describe as the commercial accelerator. So we try and create the conditions where all of the innovations can be applied, and that we can get direct learning through delivery on commercial projects. We leverage a network effect from all these aligned collaborators who all have a vested interest in the delivery of the homegrown mass timber product. And we work very collaboratively with a whole raft of early adopters, of customers, of aligned organisations. The Transforming Timber project, which we've just concluded, it was a 12-month project, £1.5 million of Innovate UK funding, allowed us to deliver a series of work packages. We were able to look at value chain mapping, product family architecture, whole life cycle analysis, went through a quality assurance, performance testing and post-occupancy evaluation sort of process, and that allowed us to do acoustic, structural, thermal testing, but also, importantly, some fire testing, which was led by University of Edinburgh, Luke Busby and his team. We also looked at system design of living labs, so looking really at that, leveraging the benefit that can come from that digital twin approach, and how that can allow us to do more with the homegrown mass timber once we understand that resources. We've manufactured a 2-bed, 2-story duplex demonstrator. We created a series of digital tool sets, started to establish a knowledge exchange library and a materials library that helps from both the educational side of things, but also from the transition of existing incumbent manufacturers in the industry. And all of this distills into what can we deliver as a commercialization sort of piece. So how do we take that forwards and demonstrate it as a viable process. So to do this, we looked at the product development, and we've got this methodology map where how do we move homegrown products up the value chain? How do we create the components? Look at that through a five capitals approach. Understand the inherent sort of important drivers for the industry, or what they should be, and through doing that, create that value lab product architecture that allows us to deliver a range of products into the market. This is what we set out at the start of the project, and this is what 12 months on, what we have successfully delivered. We've delivered a series of engineered products that didn't just focus on creating homegrown cross-laminated timber, but glue lam and nail lam as well. We then originated some new products using and components that use those products. So we created a glue laminated timber portal, which you'll see more of in a minute, and a host of other products. Those then bake into actual construction systems. So our own series of systems responding to a series of different project briefs and demands. And through evolving the systems for those, we in tandem create the successful case studies and use cases where those are rolled out. On the digital side of things, this has allowed us to create a series of digital design tools. Primarily, this work's led by Napier University. So here you have Louise Rogers led on the design for manufacture, assembly and disassembly part of things. And Dr. Andrew Livingston on the creation of building information digital design tools. So a solution that allows designers to have the integral characteristics of our mass timber products within the early design stage. That then feeds into a mass timber design tool that Bartosz Belch was able to lead on, which allows us a really agile approach to how we can specify and optimize the structural componentry within a build system, and respond as the project evolves, respond to really optimize at each stage and make sure that we're building only with as much timber as we need to. And that's a very powerful tool for us. And then Scott Bissett led on how we create the digital twin and sensoring approach, so that we're baking sensors into the series of buildings that we've been delivered and will continue to deliver as living lab projects. That allows us to get real-time information on the actual in-use performance of the buildings, such that we can then compare it with the design performance and validate the systems that we've designed, and also simulate and improve upon those as we go forwards. So importantly was to get started and actually get manufacturing. So there's been a lot of perception barriers over the use of homegrown mass timber, but working with BSW Timber and specifically Dave Mills, the mill manager at Botergarten Mill, we're able to demonstrate at commercial scale that we could get homegrown lamella down to 12% moisture content with minimum loss of yield. That meant that we had the platform for a viable manufacturing process. What you can see here is the very first CLT panels that came off the line, and frankly, we nailed it first go. We had visual grade CLT panels coming off the line that are then have subsequently been baked into the two-story, two-bed demonstrator unit. Great to be able to shortcut to a successful product. We created these nail laminated ceiling panels which use beech nails in the process of manufacturing by Beck Fastenings via Young and Black here in the UK. We created this glue laminated timber portal system for the Synergy unit, which we then further enhanced for our other systems, and a glue laminated floor panel. So we've got this immediately in that first rollout, a suite of products that we could then enhance. We proposed that we would deliver a series of living lab projects, which we've gone on to successfully deliver. The majority of the projects which are shown on this page here. Some of them are still in development, and some of them are stuck in planning. And one of them we're creating. It didn't go forward with homegrown product, but we're creating a case study around the simulating if it had been. So it's great to actually get live projects on the ground. So we've got Fettes College, 6 study rooms that were delivered into Edinburgh. Here you can see the design tool being used to, we're halfway through the project, we had to create a 2.5 metre cantilever at the front of the units. We were able to do that using the design tool. We created this beacon of hope, really showcasing the homegrown mass timber in a legacy piece that has real import in Glasgow. This is the 2-bed, 2-story demonstrator. You know, great manifestation of the homegrown product from the earliest point. We also, and this all coincides with COP26, delivered a demonstration classroom for UK government's Department for Education, which shows, you know, a zero carbon build system. This would be delivered, as you can see top left, as a, you know, scale, a very large scale school project, and we anticipate doing a series of demonstration projects between now and actual rollout of full scale schools, hopefully by 2025. We created some off-grid cabins. We went on post COP26 to deliver homegrown mass timber extensions this is an extension on a house in Edinburgh, actually, for Professor Robert Hairstans, who led on the creation of so much of the data and understanding of the timber homegrown resource that underpins the piece of work. So great to deliver that over a weekend in January this year. And that's, you know, that's a form of retrofit, but we've also established this near home retrofit kit of parts, which allows us to have essentially a configurator for different spans, scales of unit. Everything can be put through a digital configurator, allows us to do retrofit of existing properties. This is us retrofitting our office in Invergordon. We took on a new space and bought a porta cabin for £1, so it's looking a bit sharper now that we've done the work on the inside. Next project will be, you know, to roll that out for hopefully for Transport for London for a much larger space. That then becomes a template for scale impact with that. That same build system can form a new build set of components. So same fundamental components, but with performance to be able to be used externally. And that is now immediately rolling into delivery of a training centre for Scottish Power. So really just at each point, sort of doing the technical innovation and delivering it into live projects. You know, we've done the new build school system. We're also looking at that as a retrofit. So working with Hampshire County Council, who have 400 Scholar schools, system built schools, but built in the 60s and needing retrofit. And we're looking from that to how that could be done as a domestic retrofit as well. You know, such an importance of getting that retrofit challenge sorted in the market, and you know, if we can do that with biogenic material, then you know, what a fantastic solution that would be. So really, what, you know, just this as a final slide, just to explain how that all then feeds back. You know, we've gone on a very rapid and exciting journey of demonstrating the componentry, the systems, but what all that leverages is the value of those relationships between ENU, BEST, and Enmite and ourselves. But through doing that, we can create, you know, that proven model and the set of partnerships that catalyze that wider commercialization, so we can keep ramping up, you know, keep creating more impacts, keep spinning out the next product, and crucially, you know, we can incubate and accelerate, which allows us to bring the next generation of inspired and inspiring students, graduates through to become part of this process. A huge proportion of our team is made up of students who've come through from Napier, from other universities, and I think Mila can talk even in a much more informed way about that than me, but brilliant part of what we do.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Matt, for the lovely segue. I'll continue on with the work that Built Environment Smart Transformation, or previously the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, are doing to support young people. I know, Matt, you've helped so many people, you know, myself included, definitely. But also we saw Louise Bartosz, not to mention Max Garcia, Victor Henkel, Rory Dog, all of us are mass timber champions, you know, all over the world. So yeah, really appreciate all the work you do in that. So the Built Environment Changemakers is a group which I have the pleasure of chairing, and I'll just introduce us briefly. So we are a group of professionals from across the industry, and the purpose of this group is to advocate for systemic change. So we deal with very big concepts, in essence, to make the built environment in the UK, and more specifically in Scotland, a more welcoming place for the next people than what we have found it to be. So we want to transform the sector in a way that is sustainable, inclusive, and fair. Some really big concepts there. And we've got a fantastic team. So this is the facilitation team. I myself am the chair. We've got 3 vice chairs, and we really see ourselves as the people who facilitate the ideas of the group. So it's a very collective, flat hierarchy structure. So we've got a multi-skilled team from both the public and the private sectors. I'll point out some people along the way. Let's say Daniel is passionate about quantity surveying, which includes carbon counting to balance as a balance to cost. Gina is really passionate about equality, diversity, and inclusion. And Owen is big on improving skills specifically for house building. So this is our team, about 12 people. And what we've developed is a roadmap about how we can get from the present up until in about 10 years' time to create that that inclusive, fair, and then also sustainable future in the built environment. And we're doing that through 3 strands of work, all supported by digitalization. So we see people as the heart of everything we do, and then digital tools as the supporting structure. So we're working on sustainability, equality, diversity, inclusion, and skills and careers topics. Here's a flavor of the types of questions we are starting to answer with our work. So we are a volunteering group. We do this pretty much in our spare time, and we've had to set up a website, etc. So we're now at the point where we're collecting ideas and setting up projects to be delivered over the next few years. So in digitalization, we're working on aspects such as AR and VR technology, but also interrelated. How can we enable SMEs, a smaller consultancy, to access building information modeling, and how should the construction sector transform in BIM over the next years? In sustainability, we're thinking about very holistic ideas such as integration, that economic, social, and environmental piece. The critical role of modern methods of construction. Matt, all the great examples you just showed, and how they lead to net zero and a circular economy. So all that is interrelated in sustainability, and that also links to equality, diversity, and inclusion as a social measure almost of sustainability. So here we think about how can we make the workplace more accessible, how can we disseminate best practices from organizations, because everybody seems to be doing their own thing in EDI, and we've spoken with a lot of those organizations. So how can we make those tips accessible to the entire industry? And then critically in skills, so how can we make the built environment more attractive to people who want to enter the sector, to really showcase, Matt, you showed all the cool innovation stuff that all these young people are doing at ecosystem. So how can we showcase those types of roles rather than the more traditional roles, to really inspire young people to come and work in the built environment and have a very fulfilling and also very flexible career pathway. So those flexible routes are very important to us. And so now we're narrowing down those ideas in equality, diversity and inclusion, sustainability and skills, underpinned by digitalization, to create, for example, a set of workshops that can be delivered in schools, or a set of presentations that can be delivered to professionals to showcase how we can transform the built environment. So that's everything from me. It's a pleasure to present with you, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. This is wonderful to see. So we have a couple of themes that have been presented today. One is talking about the use of homegrown timber. And for our audience who's international, to know that historically Scottish timber has not been used in Scotland. It's been imported timber used in Scotland from Sweden primarily, but also Central Europe. And so how do they use and can start using their own resource? It's a more sustainable way to do it. And so that's one theme. The other theme that I saw going throughout these presentations is the engagement, as you asked that question, of the future generation, the workforce that will be filling these jobs. And related to that, Mila, you talked in particular about really what we see at ModX as an evolution of the economy from an industrial economy to a knowledge economy to what I would call as a network digital economy. And now we're in this next stage, which is a human economy. And how do we take these lessons from really trying to be responsible for the planet, but now taking it to a next level, which is how do we empower the next generation to do that in a smart way? Something that our generation probably has managed to mess up quite a bit, and the previous generation as well. How do we foster these young folks to do that? So the first question, and then I'll turn it over to Ivan and Tyler to ask some questions, is we struggle, I would say, on our side and where we're from in the United States in managing that evolution of the economy, right? We're still stuck in a sort of industrial and also knowledge economy. The role of the university is just being to fill jobs and workforce, as opposed to really trying to create a better planet and a better state of the human race. So I would just, I would just ask you, do you think that is unique to Scotland, unique to Europe? Do you think, how has that evolved? And is that something that's been led by universities, or is it now sort of co-led by industry and university and government? How do we create that kind of culture in a society that fosters that kind of growth, which is really positive and healthy?
Should I kick things off, Matt? Yeah, I'll do a short comment. Yeah, thanks, Ben. So yeah, in my opinion, it's actually that trifecta of all three, the academia, the industry and government working together. So we are seeing a lot of more empowerment of young people in government, and that was a part of how the Be Change Makers group came to be. So we do sit on the Scottish Construction Leadership Forum, for example, because all the senior leaders there are hungry to understand what do young people need in the built environment, and we do what we can to present the views to make those decisions suitable for young people. But then ultimately, I think it depends a lot on people. As you say, it's the people economy. So it's all about how does each person interpret their role, either in academia, government or industry, and what are they doing personally to support the planet. And we're seeing a lot, and again, that's something we're seeing a lot more of, just in people's day-to-day lives being very conscious of decisions. And then also being very conscious of the types of conversations they're having, because to my mind, a lot of the change we see is actually happening from conversations such as these. But if you think about it, whenever there's a new law to be created, how does that happen? That gets debated in the House of Commons. That's a conversation. If there's a suggestion to a practice in industry that's being changed and implemented, Matt, how does that happen? That happens through a series of meetings and brainstorming sessions, etc. But yeah, so for me, it's a lot about the power of conversation, and along with that, personal responsibility. But yeah, Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I think it's something which is really well, that combination of approach and that that holistic bringing together the different lines of capabilities, values, strengths, I think has been what's been demonstrated through the Transforming Timber project specifically. I think it's not to say that is the state of the of the marketplace and the industry and politics, generally, but I think it's an emerging there's an emerging set of drivers that make the right conditions for that to happen. One of the slides that I showed, we have that 5 capitals approach where we're looking for that balance between the physical, natural, social, human, and financial capital. If we set out very much with this project, if we can't achieve a harmony between those, then it's not a successful outcome. And also to marry that, and if you like, almost create prism through which all of the decision making has to be done, where we have those considerations, but also those industry drivers. Not necessarily what the industry drivers are at large, but what they need to be going forward around sustainability, the culture, the productivity, regulation, digitization, and skills. And if we can create this vortex where you put stuff into that, and what spits out is formed by that harmonious sort of bringing together of all of those considerations, then really that's where I believe that we can deliver the impact that's required. We're in an emergency situation. We need to focus on all of those considerations at the same time.
Matt, as a follow-up on that, I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on the obviously the research and development and the technology development and the product development and the interrelationship with those facets of your work with the commercialization strategy, subsequent business models, and the market acceptance challenges that are invariable in this industry, and what that relationship looks like, and if you could speak to that and the feedback loop that hopefully exists between those elements.
Yeah, let me try and so I think the right conditions are emerging in the marketplace, where there's an increasing awareness that we need to consider the upfront carbon, we need to consider the digitization, we need to all these things are increasingly prominent in thinking, but still all of that change doesn't happen quickly. You have to create pressure as well. So I think where we've been particularly effective in this is by running towards the challenging projects, running towards the complexity. So running towards projects where a client has an appetite to do those things, but also has a real time constraint on delivery. If we as an organization can say, we'll put ourselves under ridiculous pressure to deliver that project on time, but in doing that, we want to demonstrate X, Y, and Z. That's how we move the dial, and it's been really interesting. And it creates a stressful environment within which to deliver, but a really dynamic and exciting environment. The challenge for ourselves is how to gear ourselves better so that we don't kill ourselves in the process. But that we're starting to get better at that as well. But I think it's understanding we want to achieve all of that, and then applying the pressure. So there's a pain point that we can solve, and in doing that, the payback is we move the agenda forwards quicker than it otherwise would do, if that makes sense.
It does. It's really interesting. So you as a group, you're actually identifying and selecting projects that help accelerate your development cycle as well, and therefore the market acceptance loop is created and propelled forward.
Yeah, and it makes the decision, nobody wants generally to go first, but if the only way they can get what they need is to go first, then it creates, then it does that. And and at the back of that, and it also makes for a very quick iteration, very quick sort of feedback loop. And so on the back of that, you then have a proven and accepted product. Somebody's gone first, and the next folk will follow. And if we do it successfully, which we try to, then it's easier to build on success. So.
That's actually kind of interesting as maybe a last question about choosing even homegrown timber as a challenge, because as we know, so in the US, we take for granted that we have high percentage of wood construction, and by scale and by market share, but what we also accept is the poor quality of fiber and the poor quality of sawn product. And it's had a big impact on the growth of housing in general and offsite in general. And so maybe to contextualize this, where was Scotland in terms of use of homegrown timber? Where is it, and where do you want it to go? Because you make it look easy, as hard as it is, but understanding the challenge that you guys faced and where you are and where you want to be in terms of what is the amount of homegrown timber used in Scotland, and where does Scotland see itself, and even UK-wide see itself in 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I don't know the exact figure, but I think there's something along the lines of 85% of construction, or let's say in the domestic market, 85% of new build houses are built with timber, but
and how much of that is Scottish? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, and something like 85% of that is imported, interestingly. So, that has been the norm. And there's been a presumption against the use of the homegrown product, that it's not good enough, that it would take too much to dry it. All of these, but so many of the barriers to greater adoption, better utilization have been perception barriers. I think what we've had over the last period is the all the right convergence of the right enabling conditions, which have ramped up with supply chain challenges. If we can create better supply chain security, if we can source from homegrown products, we can create better circular solutions. We can move the value chain with the homegrown resource, keep that carbon locked into a much longer cycle. So historically there hasn't been wide utilization of it, but I think what this project and the work that we've collectively been doing has achieved in demonstrating is that it is viable. But what you have, our starting point, crucially, was to understand the resource that we have, and we can do that because of the backstory of all the work that's been done by particularly Napier and enabled by so many of the stakeholders that you saw on some of the slides. So that's our starting point. We understand the resource, so we understand what it's. We're not looking to duplicate or replicate what's manufactured in Europe, but produce something that understands and leverages that resource. And if we do that, there's a very rich vein of opportunity. The demand is emerging, and if we can create that platform, then we can also bring other biogenic materials forward. So let's see homegrown wood fiber insulation coming on the back of the mass timber. We've hopefully created the commercial demonstration of that, and hopefully that will now enable the scale investment to come behind that. We'll be investing ourselves and scaling rapidly, but we want as great an impact as possible. So that welcomes a wider engagement on that front.
Yeah, Mila, please, one more. Yeah, please.
Yeah, just a comment on the role of academia and all of that, Matt, because I know, let's say Stora Enso, that is me personally, so we're supporting a PhD student at Edinburgh Napier University who you work very closely with, Matt. So Astrid is dealing with new procurement models enabled by digital twins. So there's quite an interesting piece there about all the product innovation, which is fantastic, but then you also need to innovate the process to go alongside the products, and that's a really interesting example of using digital tools or digital twins to then change the process to make it suitable to your product. But yeah, just to highlight that point of the argument as well.
Yeah, 100%.
It's wonderful. And just to round this out, for those who may not be familiar, Scotland is very unique in the UK and unique in the world. And we're hoping to take folks there as ModX Exchange very soon with our partners here on the call and others, and show people around the country this wonderful, around the world, this wonderful country and what they've been able to accomplish with a strong consolidated effort of government, industry, and universities. So with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank a leader in the industry who we mention often, Dr. Robert Hairstans, who has really led out on a lot of these thoughts a decade ago, and it's created quite an ecosystem. So with that, thank you, Mila. Thank you, Matt, and we hope to see you real soon in Scotland as we bring some folks to see what you're doing. So,
we look forward to welcoming you. That'll be wonderful. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.